I have the privilege of being joined by Travis Dickinson, who is the professor of philosophy at Dallas Baptist University, specializing in epistemology and philosophy of religion. He's also the author of Wandering Toward God, Logic and the Way of Jesus, and Everyday Apologetics. And he contributes to the Christian Research Journal, speaks at churches and conferences, which brings him to New Zealand right now. He's been talking at Thinking Matters, Tauranga last night, and I believe Auckland tonight. Travis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much. It's a privilege.
It's great to have you. Now, I understand that you have been on quite the journey of education, and you are passionate about learning, and you believe that pursuing truth and thinking are all acts of worship, loving God with the mind. So let's talk about your journey. So you went from Alaska Bible College to a PhD in philosophy. So for you, what was a pivotal moment where you were like, yes, I'm going to pursue this. I have a passion for this deep thinking process, and I'm going to go for it with apologetics?
Yeah, so that happened for me in seminary, where I just didn't have a really specific direction. I just knew I wanted to serve the Lord. I wanted to be in ministry. And then what came crashing in was sitting in a seminary classroom where I began to have some doubts. And for the very first time, growing up in a very Christian setting, just really kind of just assuming that Christianity was true, for the first time, I really questioned it. I really wondered if, in fact, it was true. And what I did is leaned in, and I found a lot of answers. And so that sort of set me on that journey to keep pursuing.
That's interesting, because I want to ask you, like, is it actually okay to have doubts about faith, to be like fully on fire for God one minute and then the next minute go, oh, is this all bogus?
Right. Well, I hope so, because that's my story. And I think that I can really give a kind of biblical reason for this. 1 Corinthians 13:12, Paul says that we see through a glass darkly, and our knowledge is partial. So given just our, kind of finite state, of course we're going to have questions and not be able to figure it all out. And there will be the struggle as part of that. And let's just call that doubts, where we just don't know what to think. We don't know if it's true or not, and we struggle through it. And that's all it really is, to doubt. And it's just a normal part of the human experience.
Well, that's certainly comforting for me personally. I want to ask you, like, personally, what is one of the biggest things, perhaps theologically, or just a concept in Christianity, that you've personally wrestled with in your faith walk?
Yeah, I think the classic problem of evil, where we just look around at the world and we see the pain and the suffering, and just, it's everywhere. We all experience it at some point in our lives. And I think that's a very difficult issue to wrestle through, because it's not just intellectual. There's the emotional struggle that can sometimes even be harder there. And then, and the part that I would say that I've struggled with the most of that is to ask, where is God in that? The so-called hiddenness problem. It feels like God's just not present, and to really wrestle with that's a tough one. But I think there's real good answers, and I usually find the most powerful pastoral answers to some of these big questions that you would think this is just going to be the one that really takes it all down. And in fact, you find the key to life in some ways, the key, the meaning to life in all of it. So
I often find I have these struggles when I'm trying to explain stuff to my kids, because I was asked about, why should we be grateful for X, Y, Z? And I said, look, the fact that you're born in New Zealand means that you are rich, you are wealthy, and you are blessed because you're born here. Like, it's life is easy for you. And then there are other kids that are born in other parts of the world where they are oppressed. Girls have to get married young, child marriage. It's horrendous. And they're just scraping to get by. And then I'm like, and it's not really fair. And then I'm like trying to explain to them, they're like, well, why did God, let those kids be born there? And I'm like, I don't actually know the answer to that, but I know that we're called to care, and we're called to be generous, and we're also called to be grateful. But there are so many things that you wrestle with, right? So I guess, this is where philosophy and apologetics comes in, which you have studied extensively. So what do you think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people have about the role of, let's say, philosophy or apologetics in Christianity?
Yeah, I would say that the misconception is that this is just an academic exercise, that it's just for the, well-educated or something to that effect. And one of my biggest messages is that apologetics should be devotional. It should be us asking questions in order to know God and to worship, to be worship in that sense. So when, as you alluded to, Jesus tells us that the greatest commandment is in part to love God with all of our minds. Notice that the posture there is a posture of a lover, that we would be pursuing God out of love with our minds. So we're asking questions, not as skeptics, not as trying to be troublemakers, but we're asking questions precisely because we want to know him and love him and worship him.
Like inquiring children.
Absolutely.
That want to know about the world that they live in.
Yeah, they're just
why
curious.
They're here and, why you love them.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful picture. Well, let's talk about something else because, today's culture is full of competing worldviews and it can feel overwhelming sometimes trying to start a conversation around this. So how can Christians engage in meaningful conversations about faith without feeling like they're swamped?
Yeah. I think bringing that curiosity into the conversation is just crucial. So by asking questions, we so often think that we just have to have all of our answers kind of ready to go and just give a speech, but that usually doesn't go that well, honestly. When we get on our soapbox and sort of start preaching at people, I think just to keep in mind that this is a conversation, and oftentimes if it's a relationship, you said it a minute ago when you were talking to your kids, you said, I don't know. And that is perfectly fine to say, because there's times where I'm in a conversation and I've been studying these things for 20 plus years on an academic level. And there are questions I get asked where I have to say, I don't know. But the beauty in a relationship is that we can say, I don't know. And I think people respect that. It helps the defenses to come down and we can kind of have a heart to heart. But then you just come back and so now you've engaged in the life of the mind and you've been pursuing God, loving God with your mind by researching and investigating. And now you're ready in a 1 Peter 3:15 sense to give a defense for the hope that's within as you continue the relationship with your friend. And then the next question comes where they ask a hard one and you say, I don't know, let me do this again and get back to you. And that's a beautiful picture of how we grow and we're able to give a defense and hopefully reach folks for the gospel.
And it's relational. I like
Absolutely.
that. And I guess it comes down to also figuring out what the right questions to ask are, because it's about asking questions and seeing where other people are at and what they think. And then you're able to respond to that.
Yeah.
And this is a great opportunity through Thinking Matters to do that, to hear from wise teachers and, get some ideas about how you can initiate these conversations. So I understand you're going to be talking about two topics: permission to doubt your faith and wandering toward God.
Yeah.
Sounds very exciting. So where can people go to find out more about attending Thinking Matters and hearing more from you?
Yeah, so the website is kind of the one-stop shop, and that is thinkingmatters.org.nz, and you get all the information there.
Awesome. And I understand that you're at Journey Church tonight at 7 o'clock.
Yes.
So if you'd like to attend, you can go to thinkingmatters.org.nz. Travis Dickinson, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you. It was a joy.
Amazing. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss the next video.
We'll see you in the next one.